Okay, we're ready to go.
Good morning. I'd like to call the special meeting of the Board of Estimate and Apportionment to order. Mrs. Stephanie Green, please call the roll.
Mayor Jones,
Present.
Comptroller Green,
Here.
President Reed,
Here.
all present.
Wonderful. Items presented for the first time. Item number 1, request from the President of the Board of Aldermen for approval of Board Bill number 2, Committee Substitute as amended. This ordinance authorizes the receipt and appropriates funds related to the COVID-19 pandemic under the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021, otherwise known as ARPA.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I move for adoption of Board Bill number 2, Committee Substitute as amended as listed on the agenda.
Okay. There is no second.
All right. Well, I have a couple of questions. I'd like to inquire of Matt Moak, the interim city councilor. I wasn't able to hear you, Madam Mayor.
Here.
Okay, Matt, are you there? Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, thank you. So, much has been made in this last few days about a legal opinion with your name on it that says that Board Bill number 2, Committee Substitute as amended is an illegal board bill. Oh, in reviewing your legal opinion, and if you carefully read through your legal opinion, I'm not gathering that from completely from this opinion. And I'll point to a couple things within it. And I also will note that, just so that you know, that the author of the original document was Ted Williamson of Reuben Brown. I had a conference call yesterday with Ted Williamson of Reuben Brown to gain further clarification of his memo and the meaning and the intent of his memo. Was that document shared with you? On his response, I asked him also to codify our conversation in an email and send it back. And I know the mayor's office received a copy of it, and I don't know.
Yeah, I received. Yeah, Mr. President, I received it probably about 10 minutes ago.
Okay.
I agree with it. I agree with what Ted wrote. Pretty much
Okay.
100%.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you. Because essentially what he wrote was ultimately it is the manner in which city expends the funds and not the language in the bill itself that determines whether the city is in compliance with the Treasury Department guidelines. And that's the underlying issue here, because I don't know that, some people, when they read your what was put out as your legal opinion, they put it out as a legal opinion that clearly showed that Board Bill number 2, Committee Substitute, was an illegal board bill. And the whole time we've been contending that that is not factual. It ultimately is the use of the funds and the compliance piece that we put in place and the final programming that we put in place that determines that. The city has shown, and the consultant services that we've used in the past have shown that we've been able to do this quite well. We did it when we sent money over to St. Louis Development Corporation, $5 million to them to administer our small business development loans. And they put, I think it was Rob Orr, put together a really good program that made sure it checked all the boxes. Is it also your understanding that the ARPA rules continue to be refined? And we are to see another round of rules coming up here. I think it's in August or September.
Mr. President, yes. This reminds me of 2020, of course, when we were faced with a similar situation where the U.S. Treasury guidance was, well, late to the game, frankly. And so we had to make a lot of decisions early on before that guidance arrives. And this situation strikes me as very similar. Getting back to my memo, though, briefly, I think my concern, and it remains, is at the four corners of Board Bill 2 Committee Substitute does not explicitly meet the ARPA guidelines. And I think that's bad practice. The idea that we, I'm sorry.
How so?
Well, the idea that we would legislate something that on its face does not appear to meet the guidelines. I think that's bad practice. The idea, the concept that we can come in after the fact and somehow cure that. I'm not saying that couldn't be done, but as Ted indicated in an email you just mentioned that I saw very recently, the best way to approach this is to outline from the very beginning, including in the board bill, how the money meets federal guidelines as we know them today.
No, he didn't.
And I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry for cutting you off, but
Oh, it's okay.
the full board meeting starts in 50 minutes, so I want to make sure we stay on point here.
Okay.
He did not state that the way you just outlined it. What he did say throughout the process of administering the funds, it is in the city's best interest to make clear that the funds will be spent in accordance with federal guidelines. That's a direct quote from
President Reed,
from this.
if you continue that paragraph.
Yeah, and I'm about
that paragraph.
I'm about to. And he says, for that reason, I would recommend that the board bill and any associated policies and contemporaneous documentation supporting the actual expenditures all explicitly document that any funds spent on economic development are specifically intended to address the negative economic impact on the pandemic. So let's go back to that. In your original memo, section 2.11, in the last sentence under answer, it says the Treasury will presume that certain types of services are eligible uses when provided in a qualified census tract. Are these services being provided in qualified census tract?
Yes, I believe they are.
I would think they are too, especially given the fact that the amount of funding that we're receiving is based on the CDA formula. And the CDA formula takes into account concentrated poverty, disinvestment, and all these things that we see happening within these corridors.
Great.
So when we formulate the final program, just like we did with small business development, just like we just did in the last spending package that we included. Part of what goes into that formulation is the vetting, is the determination of who's qualified and not. All of those things happen on the back end. All those things happen during the formulation of the program. And as a further example, you guys chose to pull out section 6 of this board bill, which sends money to North St. Louis. but no other section, but the other sections included in this same board bill does not explicitly call out that language that you're saying. Matter of fact, in the preamble at the beginning of the board bill, we lay out clearly that these funds are to be expended in accordance with ARPA, right? So the ARPA rules. So my question to you is there anything in this board bill that prevents the city from setting up a program and expending the funds in an appropriate manner?
I mean, I can't, Mr. President, I can't really speak to what's going to happen in the future.
Well,
And I'm sorry, I never tried to. I just tried to express that there was concern on the four corners of the document, the explicit language, that the ARPA guidelines were not made, specifically in section 6. Now, I do understand that other parts of the board bill, which I don't profess to be an expert on by any means, but I understand that members of the administration have been meeting with Reuben Brown for months to determine whether or not those expenses on their face appear to be eligible under ARPA. And I understand they generally all were documented in such a way that they would be, but
Okay.
section 6 was not. And I don't want to speak for Reuben Brown, but I know they were I have seen documents where the 53 million that we're arguing about essentially is disallowed next to it. They're the experts, and they've spoken. And so what could be done in the future to cure it, or, you know, it's very hard to speak with that, but that was the reason I wrote the memo, is I was concerned about the explicit language of Board Bill 2 committee substitute.
Well, Matt, I'll tell you this. You just said that, well, earlier you said that no matter what, we should include the language, right? You said we should explicitly call out the language. So in every other section in this board bill where the language is not called out, somehow now there should be an exception to that. So I don't buy that.
I don't think I said that, Mr. President. I have to say that again, you know, I'm taking most of my cues from the Reuben Brown analysis of the uses, and
Reuben Brown,
that's how,
but I spoke to Reuben Brown yesterday, and they said that this isn't a qualified census tract. And these are, let me ask.
President Reed, I'm not going to belabor this point. You have a meeting that's starting in a few minutes, and we have some options. I'm speaking. We have some options that can fix. Excuse me.
You're interrupting.
Point of order. No, I'm ending this conversation as the chair. I am ending this conversation.
Automatically end the conversation when I have the floor. I mean, those are the rules that we deal with here, right? If we want to later adopt a rule that gives limited amount of time for a person.
President Reed, I'm really just trying to move things along because you have a meeting that starts in 45 minutes, and I'm about to offer you some suggestions to remedy this.
I understand. Nothing needs to be remedied here.
Yes, it does.
Nothing needs to be remedied here. On its face, Matt Moak cannot tell me that this board bill as it exists right now is illegal.
Matt Moak represents the entire city as the interim city councilor, and he has provided an opinion with the consultation of Reuben Brown that says that these funds, as they are currently worded, do not meet the legal requirements of the current ARPA bill.
And can you show me where they're saying that?
Well,
I don't see that.
You have the memo. You have the memo. I'm going to read the entire. Excuse me. I'm speaking. I'm going to read the entire memo.
I've read the entire memo.
I'm going to read it for the record.
All right.
Because the question that was asked about may recipients use funds for general economic development or workforce development? And the answer is generally not. Recipients must demonstrate that funding uses directly address negative economic impact of the COVID-19 public health emergency, including funds used for economic development or workforce development. For example, job training for unemployed workers may be used to address negative economic impacts of the public health emergency and be eligible. Thus, while general economic development spending is not permitted, spending on economic development related to the negative economic impacts of the pandemic is permitted. As we also discussed, ultimately, it is the manner in which the city expends the funds and not the language of the board bill itself that determines whether the city is in compliance with Treasury guidance. However, throughout the process of administering the funds, it is in the city's best interest to make clear that the funds will be spent in accordance with federal guidelines. And for that reason, I recommend that the board bill, any associated city policies, and the contemporaneous documentation supporting the actual expenditures all explicitly document that any funds spent on economic development are specifically intended to address the negative economic impacts of the pandemic as required by the Treasury Department guidelines. So we have to take this whole opinion in its entire context. You can't just take bits and pieces out in order to do what we need it to do. So with that said, I'm sorry. I offer ENA Amendment number 1 to Board Bill number 2, Committee Substitute as amended, combined perfected on affordable housing, beginning on page 6, lines 3 through 5 in section 5, to strike out the words on section 5, there are hereby appropriated the sum of $5,600,000 of the 2021 coronavirus local fiscal recovery funds to the Affordable Housing Commission, and insert thereof to read in words and figures as follows. Section 5, there are hereby appropriated the sum of $25,600,000 of the 2021 coronavirus local fiscal recovery funds to the Affordable Housing Commission, beginning on page 6, lines 12 through 14, and section 6, strike out the words, section 6, there are hereby appropriated the sum of $62,100,000 of the 2021 coronavirus local fiscal recovery funds to the St. Louis Development Corporation, and insert in lieu thereof to read the following words and figures as follows. Section 6, there are hereby appropriated the sum of $42,100,000 of the 2021 coronavirus local fiscal recovery funds to the St. Louis Development Corporation. I've offered an amendment. Is there a second?
Madam Mayor, look, you all are gonna railroad this thing. I get it. But I was still inquiring of the city councilor. It is in poor form for this board not to allow that discussion to reach its full conclusion, because every amendment and everything that you were planning is based on the premise of the legality of the board bill. And I cannot find an attorney in town other than your city councilor, your interim city councilor, that even comes close to saying that this board bill is.
Would you like to provide those legal opinions? You said you had a legal opinion. We'd like to see it. I'm sure Matt Moak would like to see it.
And here's the other thing. I don't think Matt Moak would if pressed and if under oath, I don't think Matt Moak would say the board bill is illegal, because the board bill is not illegal. Everyone will tell you that, even Matt Moak.
Accusation, President Reed.
That's the reality. That's where we're at. Because if you read through his own opinion, section 2.11, where we talk about where he quotes the ARPA facts and questions, and it says the Treasury will presume that certain types of services are eligible uses when provided in a qualified census tract. So my question is if there's a business that's opening that will train people who have lost their job or who have been displaced due to COVID-19, would that be an eligible use within this qualified census tract? And would Section 6 allow that? And ultimately, the rules, what we must have are the rules on the back end of this process, and the process is defined and measured by the administration and by the consultants that we have involved in the process. We've done this very well. We just did it with all the $100 and some odd million that we just went through. We didn't have this unusual step that we're talking about now. We did not target one end of the city like North St. Louis and try to limit funds from going to a specific corridor. The federal government also says that within certain areas that have been depressed, that have already had economic hardship, those areas will have a much longer road to recovery, and we should pay special attention to those areas. And that's what Section 6 does. And I also want to make sure that we underscore in the letter from Ted Williams, where he says, while general economic spending is not permitted, and that's the thing that we continue to hang our hats on, but it says, there's a comma right there, and it says spending on economic development related to negative economic impacts on the pandemic are permitted. So, so that's what will happen under Section 6. That's the program that will be formulated and put together with the measures in place to assure that if indeed grants are given out, those grants are given out to qualified recipients. It's equivalent to if we would have done a tent encampment, and then everyone that we give a tent from that was purchased through these funds, what was going to be a process that would be in place to say, are you homeless, or did you become homeless just since COVID-19 hit? Or did you just become homeless since COVID-19? Because if you just became homeless just due to COVID-19, we'll give you a tent. But if you were homeless prior to COVID-19, you don't get a tent, right? So, but
Once again, President Reed, you're taking things out of context so you can make it say what you needed to say. Again, we're offering you remedies. It's not about not investing in North St. Louis. It is about investing. It is about doing it the right way. We are just trying to do things the right way.
We are doing it the correct way.
We are not doing it the correct way according to our attorneys and according to our auditors. It is in the city's best interest that I am speaking. It is in the city's best interest to make sure to make sure that all of our language is explicit in the board bill before it passes. Because at the end of the day, like I told your staff yesterday, my name is on every report that goes to the federal government every month about how we are expending these funds. And so it is my fiduciary responsibility as an elected official to uphold the US Constitution to make sure that we are doing this the right way. So now there is an amendment. There is an amendment that has been offered. Is there a second?
The board bill gives you the ability to do that. Board bill number 2.
As it is currently written, according to our attorneys and according to our.
Let me ask the attorney, Matt Moak, are you saying that the board bill being structured the way it is right now will prevent the city from putting a program together that complies with federal guidelines?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that on the four corner.
Let him finish. Let him finish, Louis. Let him finish.
No.
Let him finish. No, I think you're taking his statement out of context.
The answer,
let him finish.
Answer is no.
Let him finish. No, let him finish. He has a follow-up. Let him finish. Mr. Moe.
Mr. President, I'm saying on the four corners of the document, it is not apparent that the economic development cited in section 6 meets ARPA guidelines. I think that's very bad practice.
It's not,
a bad-
can you
it's a
show,
bad way. I'm sorry. Go
can
ahead.
you show, I'm sorry, we're running show on time, but can you show me in any of the other sections where that holds true?
You,
No, you cannot, but again, but
I spoke to this earlier. I spoke to this earlier because
it does.
no, my understanding is the administration's been sitting down with Reuben Brown for a couple months now, figuring out what would be allowable under ARPA and what hasn't.
Well,
And that has been,
according to
and that
Reuben
made its way into the board bill. So I don't have a concern about that.
Well, hold
But
on a
this
second,
piece,
but
Reuben
according,
Brown said was disallowed, and that was my starting point, honestly. So
but according to Reuben Brown yesterday, on a conference call with me, they didn't say that, they never said that section 6 was not allowable. You know what they
Yes,
said?
they did. They
You know
said
what
that they would recommend that the board bill, any associated city policies and the contemporaneous documentation all explicitly document that any funds spent are specifically intended to address the negative economic impacts of the pandemic.
Perfect.
So we're not saying that we're not going to spend money in North St. Louis. We're saying that we have to document it, that all documentation, including board bills, must explicitly follow Treasury guidelines.
And that's,
Don't
and
you want to
that's the-
follow Treasury guidelines, Louis?
That's the job of your office, your administration to do after the passage of the bill. There's nothing in the bill.
But if I have a problem with the passage of the bill, which my signature is also on, I am allowed to bring up those problems in consultation with our attorneys and our auditors.
Madam
And
Mayor,
we are simply asking you to change just a few words to be able to do the same thing.
Madam Mayor, again, what Reuben Brown said in general, and they said all associated documents in general, it would be
including the board bill,
would be
including the board bill.
A good practice. They're not saying that the board bill is illegal or the board bill needs to be changed. Your attorney, when given a direct question, says, no, the board bill is not illegal. Now, Reuben Brown also says within their document that all associated. So if we're going to say all, that's every section of every document that we have. We explicitly call it out in Board Bill number 2 committee substitute at the beginning of it, when we say the use of coronavirus local fiscal recovery funds and ERA2 funds must adhere to federal guidance. We say it within the bill to cover the entirety of the bill, which is why it isn't in the sections, which is what we did the first time, which set a bar to assure that when the administration picked it up, they would put things in place appropriately.
So we're going to be left to clean it up? Is that what you're saying? We're going to be left to clean it up? Is that what you're saying?
Clean it up.
When it gets to the administration, that's what you said. When it gets to the
no matter what,
administration,
no matter
make sure.
No matter what, ultimately, like Reuben Brown said, ultimately, it is the manner in which the city expends the funds. So
It says that all documents have to explicitly say.
Here's the question. Here's the main question. Are you worried that your administration or anybody within your organization will misappropriate these funds?
I am simply trying to make sure, excuse me, I am speaking. I'm trying to answer your question, President Reed. Excuse me. I am simply trying to answer your question without you interrupting me.
Okay.
Again, I am saying that we should make sure that the board bill, any associated city policies, and all documentation of expenditures explicitly document that the funds spent on economic development are specifically intended to address the negative impacts of the pandemic.
Yes.
The
and
corridors as they are currently stated, the
that's-
corridors as they are currently stated are outside of Treasury guidelines.
No, they're
Again, I am speaking,
Nobody said that.
I am speaking.
Your attorney isn't even saying.
I am speaking. Thank you. I am simply saying that we should make sure that when we invest funds in North St. Louis and parts of South St. Louis, that we should make sure that the board bill that is passes legal muster by our accountants and by our attorneys.
I don't understand why you're having such a problem sending money to North St. Louis to.
I'm not saying that. You're trying to put words in my mouth, President Reed. I never said that. I never said that. I never said that. I never said that. I never said that.
For these qualified census tracts.
Last time I checked, I was born, raised, and still live in North St. Louis. I never said that.
Well, that's what it appears to be, because no other section has the word.
You're making assumptions. You're making assumptions.
This is the only
Making assumptions.
But I also wanted to make sure to remind you all that we call out, we say the use of coronavirus local fiscal recovery funds and ERA2 funds must adhere to federal guidance that has been and will be issued on the use of ARPA funds. We say that, which is why it's not in every section. But the only section you guys decided to attack was this section that sends money directly to affected corridors in North St. Louis that are clearly in qualified census tracts. And had it not been for them, those qualified census tracts and the conditions and the concentrated poverty that exists within these qualified census tracts, we wouldn't have the $500 million that's coming to the city, because it was the CDA formula that determined that. And the CDA formula was based largely on the things I just outlined that exist within those qualified census tracts. The board bill is not illegal. That's absolutely clear. The letter from Ruben Brown that says, as we also discussed, ultimately, it is the manner in which the city expends the funds, and not the language in the board bill. But then he goes on to say, but it is a good practice to explicitly call that out. And then I go back to the board bill and I say, okay, the use of coronavirus local recovery funds and ERA2 funds must adhere to federal guidance and has been and will be issued on the use of ARPA funds. It's been done. Your attorney is clear that the board bill itself as it stands is not illegal. What he said was, he pointed to Ruben Brown's another document or something that we do not have access to, that he says, Ruben Brown says non-compliant or something like that. Ruben Brown goes on to say, and has said clearly to us, and the question was posed to Ruben Brown, hey, so if we expend funds on a business that is going to retrain and repurpose people who have lost their job or been displaced, maybe even living in a tent encampment, and get them back in the job, get them job ready and back in job force, or put them directly in the job, is that an acceptable use? He said, absolutely. Is there anything that makes this document illegal? Absolutely not. But it's a good practice to call it out in every single section. And I say, we have board bill number 82 sitting before the Board of Aldermen right now. And as been stated by your office and others, it is important to get this money out to people. The fastest, quickest way to get this money out to people is for you to vote to adopt this right now No other changes has to happen at the board. The board bill has already been perfected, 27-1. So supermajority of the members of the board spent a marathon session, 12 hours reviewing this bill, putting in it things, making sure that it is compliant, which it is. And now, today, we will third read final passage. I will sign it. I have also put an emergency clause in it. It will come directly over to your office and you can sign it. And then we can get this money out to people who are hurting right now. We have board bill number 82 sitting right now in committee. So any additional policies or methodologies that we want to apply by saying, instead of having it at the top of the board bill that refers to every section, we will put it in every section of the board bill. I will agree to do that. So in board bill number 82, when we go to putting it together and calling it out, every section, we will lead the section with that language that I read to you that led the entire board bill number 2. So again, any changes to this board bill right now, any amendments to this board bill right now, I want to be clear that it will delay the relief money getting out to people, to the city of St. Louis. It serves no purpose at all whatsoever, because the programming, unless the administration feels like something is going to happen within their administration where they will not assemble the program in the appropriate manner, I see no need for changing. I'm not willing to change anything in the bill. The bill is legal. Even your attorney today said, no, it is not. It is not illegal. It's legal. So Reuben Brown doesn't come out and say the board bill isn't legal. The Treasury Department says that it presumes that certain types of services are eligible uses when provided in qualified census tract. Every place within section 6 is a qualified census tract. But I'm still just perplexed that we keep talking about section 6 when no other section within the bill holds the language that you're talking about, that is being brought forward. So, I'm going to move again that we adopt board bill number 2, committee substitute as amended, as presented from the 27 members of the board or the 27 people at the Board of Aldermen that have worked tirelessly to get this board bill before you, so that we can bring direct relief to the people of the city of St. Louis and do it right now. People are suffering. This is something that should be very easy. This should have been a 5-minute meeting. So again, I move that we adopt board bill number 2, committee substitute as amended. And any additional things that we want to do, let's talk about them in board bill 82. There is nothing illegal about board bill 2. That's clear from this meeting. I think it would be it's just in poor form to further delay this thing, because here's what happens. Just so that we're clear on what happens. If there are any changes to this board bill that has been perfected, that board bill will automatically, when we go to the Board of Aldermen, that board bill lands on the informal calendar. The Board of Aldermen would have to determine when and if it would come back to address anything in that changes. But what that means is that funding for people throughout the city, needed services for people throughout the city are being delayed and put on hold because of, I don't even know how to classify it, because it is not a legal issue, it is not a clerical issue, it is not a legislative issue. It's something that comes in the 12th hour that says, moving forward, this would be a best practice to implement. Thank you again. The board bill, where we call it out, the use of coronavirus local recovery funds and ERA2 funds must adhere to federal guidelines that has been and will be issued for the use of ARPA funds. So we've done our work. The board bill is legal, and I move that we adopt board bill number 2, committee substitute, as amended. And I also want to point out that I believe it's best practices to feed the people of the city of St. Louis. I think it's best practices to ensure that people, families that are hurting across the city of St. Louis have the resources and the relief they need. I also believe that it's best practices to assure that areas of our city who are suffering harder, who will suffer longer, receive the resources that they need. Areas of the city that, because of the historic concentrated poverty, because of the fact that they've had higher rates of affection due to coronavirus, they've had lower immunization rates in these areas. I think that those areas deserve to see board bill number 2 pass. I think those areas deserve to see the funding go to those areas. I think that the small businesses that will benefit from grants within this board bill deserve to see this board bill adopted. I think that the families that will receive the $500 deserve to see this board bill passed and adopted by this body. I think that the housing, the people who have been displaced from their housing, I think they deserve to see this board bill pass. I think the people who are waiting for funds for rental assistance, mortgage assistance, and utility assistance. I was talking to a guy yesterday and he said, look, my utility bills are through the roof and I don't have any way to pay them. I've been out of work and this and that. And he said that it's just piling up. So I gave him the information of how and who to contact to get some relief. He and his family deserve the relief that's in this package. So again, I'm asking for this committee, the Board of E&A, to do the right thing. I'm asking for you to stand up for the people of the city of St. Louis, put politics or anything else aside right now. I mean, this thing is bigger than everybody here. And I'm asking you to do the right thing. I'm asking you to adopt board bill number 2 so that we can get these needed funds out the door and feed our people and provide them the relief they need. I'm also reminding you that board bill number 82 is sitting. Board bill number 82 is in the HUD's committee right now. Board bill number 82, I recommend that we all huddle on. I recommend that that we all work collectively to assure that all the component pieces and any desired things beyond just required things, any of these other desired things are also accounted for. Again, I move that we adopt board bill number 2, committee substitute, as amended.
President Reed, I'm not offering a second, but I will say this. You've made numerous attempts to work with you to bring this bill in compliance with Treasury guidelines and Treasury rules. We have an opinion from the city councilor on the corridor language. We have SLDC, we have Reuben Brown. We don't fix fix it, then the money isn't legally expended and the money gets to where we want it to go.
There's nothing.
We are
that-
excuse me, I'm speaking.
But that's so not
I'm
fact,
speaking. Thank you.
please.
We are investing in North St. Louis in a way that is compliant with federal guidelines, so people get the money they urgently need, so we can work on development as soon as possible. So
It's-
this is,
It's.
again, we have attempted to work with you.
No,
You waited till the last minute.
no,
We
I don't want
have
you to-
tried to work with you.
It is not, look, just so that we're clear, I don't have that big ego. I don't really care whether people worry. What I do care about is that we move these things that are important in an expeditious manner. I made a commitment when we picked this thing up, and the clock was ticking when we were handed the ball. And I said, we will get this thing out of the Board of Aldermen in record time, and we will have it out by the 16th. Today is the 16th. We've done our part. We've done longest Board of Aldermen meeting in the history of the city, a 12-hour straight through no break Board of Aldermen meeting to assure that we got this thing done in the time frame we said we were going to get it done. We held extra meetings and everything to assure that we expedited it and met our chartered responsibility and our chartered requirements for passing a board bill. We've done all that. We checked all the boxes. We also put in front of you a legal qualified board bill, and anyone that says that it is not a legal board bill, they know they're on shaky footing. That's why your attorney even said himself that the board bill is not illegal. He said it. Now, Reuben Brown spoke to them yesterday. We had a conference call, me and multiple other aldermen, and we posed various different questions to him and asked him, and he was absolutely clear. He even chuckled a little bit when we talked about the board bill being illegal or not legal. And that's why he says, as we discussed, ultimately, it is the manner in which the city expends the funds and not the board bill that determines whether the city is in compliance with the Treasury Department guidelines, guidelines that are still being developed and changed and altered. So if we put something in this board bill based on the preliminary guidelines, and if we locked it in and said based on these preliminary guidelines without giving you all any flexibility to build out a program that is compliant with reporting, with auditing, and everything else put into it, which is why we put $900,000 into a pot to allow you all the funding to assure that. So there's nearly $1 million put in place so that you can do all of those things. There's nothing in this board bill that causes you not to be able to do your job. So the people deserve an opportunity for some support. And a failure of a second for adoption of this board bill is a failure of this board in supporting the community at large. So I'm going to continue to ask you all, to beg you, to plead with you, whatever it takes, to do the right thing today and support Board Bill number 2 as it stands. A board bill that's compliant, a board bill that no matter what board bill we pass will not relieve your office and all the other city departments from doing their job to assure compliance. When any business gets a grant from the city of St. Louis, there's various different check boxes that they have to meet. There's nothing in this board bill that's going to prevent that from happening. When any homeowner gets a grant or gets home improvement funds or anything related to this, there are boxes that they have to check. And there's nothing in this board bill that prevents that. That comes on the compliance and the development piece that will be developed by you, your office, the consulting agencies that they engage with. That's part of what they do. And the comptroller will only distribute those checks if indeed that compliance exists. So there's nothing in this board bill that prevents or slows down or stops that compliance from happening.
Well,
So
if that
yeah,
was the case, you would have received a second, seeing as though you have not.
I'm
I am going to end this debate and
that we adopt board bill number 2, committee substitute as amended. And I'm really asking that that this committee does the right thing. The people of the city deserve to see these funds on the streets. This board bill isn't going to move with any additional changes to it. And that would be a sad thing. A lot of an ungodly amount of hours have been spent thus far to get us right here. And the board bill has already been perfected before the Board of Aldermen with well more than the supermajority of the members of the board. The only thing that has to happen, let's be clear, the only thing to stand in between people of the city of St. Louis getting relief from COVID-19, getting the resources they need put in place or not, is the Board of E&A right now. Board of Aldermen, we've done our job. We're prepared to do it here in 6 minutes once this committee adopts board bill number 2. And again, I'm going to call it out, call it for
President Reed, may I ask you a question?
wait a minute, section 6 is the only section that
That's actually not the only section, but may I ask you a question?
has been called. Go ahead, please.
Are you willing to call a special meeting of the board to fix the issues that we have brought up to you?
There aren't any issues in the board bill. So no, there aren't any issues.
Obviously, there are if you're not receiving a second from myself or the comptroller.
There's something else at play here. This is equivalent to
Nothing else at play. We've explained to you through Brown.
No, Brown's not
Brown
saying,
and yes,
Brown's
they
not
are.
saying that it's illegal.
Okay, I'm ending this debate.
Your own
A
attorney
meeting to get
will
to.
not
There's
call
no
out.
second. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.